Second stock I ever bought was Wheaton River Minerals. It was 27 cents a share. 38 days later, it had gone up to 35 cents a share. That's a 30% increase. So what did I do? I sold it. I made $22 for pressing buttons on my computer. No manual labor involved, no hours in a field, didn't have to deal with customers. I was 18 years old and I was hooked on stocks. Today's guest is Carl Idzinski. He's a real estate agent in Windsor, Ontario, and he's also my uncle. While Carl doesn't know it, he actually played a pivotal role in my investment journey. A note about the sound today, we were having a few difficulties with our hardware, so you may notice that the levels sound kind of funny at points. However, the software we're using, which is Riverside Studio, is fantastic, so hopefully it sounds seamless on your end. We're here with Carl Idzinski, and Carl is my uncle, which is one of the reasons why he's on. But the other reason why I brought you on here, Carl, is actually, I don't know if you remember this, but probably one of the first reasons I got into investing was because I read The Wealthy Barber. And I think it was a copy either you had given to my dad or maybe you had left at grandma's house. You read The Wealthy Barber, right? Like way back when?
I don't throw any books out. I read most of it, but I've read investment books, yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure the reason I read it was because it was a copy that you had left there. Yeah, I'm almost certain of that. All right. So you, right out of school, did you go into the fire department or did you ever work at the auto companies there? Because for people who don't know, we're talking about Windsor, Ontario, and this is right across the river from Detroit. So there's all three major auto companies at the time had operations there. And anyone that's from the region has family that worked there. My dad worked at Chrysler and his dad worked at Chrysler.
Yeah, I worked for Ford Motor Company. I worked for Chrysler. I didn't get into GM, but I worked for a number of companies, National Rad, Dominion Forge, all kinds of companies.
And so you don't have any kind of financial background as far as like finance, education, or anything like that?
No, not other than books.
Yeah. So how did you get into investing? How did you start investing?
I was kind of interested in it. It was a different way to make money and stuff like that. And your grandmother, my mother, used to listen to investment people from Detroit, Michigan, and that. And there were a couple of guys that talked about investing, and there were some good things on there about investing and where to put your money. I was mildly interested, but not super interested.
So you just kind of heard it on the radio. And she never really invested herself, though. Like she never bought any stocks or anything.
I don't think so. No, she used to listen to. There was a guy named Larry Korn. He was on, and he was good. He used to say, "What the heck was it? Pigs get slaughtered and hogs get greedy." I don't know. It's about investing. If you hold out for the last penny, you're going to lose. And it actually happened to me on a stock.
I think it's bears make money, bulls make money, but pigs get slaughtered, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Your uncle, my great uncle, Nick, he did a bit of investing and he bought stocks. And I want to say he bought commodities and stuff too, because he's a farmer. And so he might have sold some of his stuff in advance. I'm not sure exactly about that. Did you ever talk to him about it?
Actually, what's interesting is now that you remind me, the Windsor Star, years ago, it used to be a much thicker paper. That's when paper was cheap. Now it's expensive, but he always used to follow the grain markets. And he'd always say, okay, soybeans are so much a bushel today, and then wheat is so much a bushel, and then it all depends on when you're taking off the crop. You take off the crop, you got an abundance, so the stocks go down. And then at the before the crops come off, there's not as much as a dearth of commodities and that. So he did watch that. Now, as far as other stocks, he probably may have dabbled in some of the others, but I know he watched the grains.
So, and then while you were at the fire department, is that when you got into real estate?
Yes, I was on the fire. I worked in construction for 10 years, from 66 to 76. And then you got laid off every winter. So there's a friend of mine that was on the fire department and said, why don't you, there's nothing to do except maybe have a few beers. So he says, why don't you go and take a real estate course? He says, you know enough about houses, which I know a lot of the construction. I'm not an expert on everything, but I dabbled in some of the other trades, like the furnace trades for a couple of years. and building houses and that, and digging houses, antennas, fences, a whole bunch of other things, and rough construction of homes like framing and that.
So you did real estate for a number of years. You're still doing it now. What's the firm you're with right now?
Keller Williams Lifestyles Real Estate. Keller Williams in the United States is the biggest residential real estate company in the United States.
And what's the market like in Windsor right now as far as real estate?
The Windsor market is slow, although there are houses being sold and listings are increasing, but the number of people that are selling their house is down a little bit, a couple of percent.
Now, in addition to all these, you got multiple careers here, but you're also an actor, right?
A bad actor. No, yeah, I do some acting part-time.
But now,
Whenever
did
I
you?
get a gig or whatever.
You were just telling me this before we were recording here. Were you recently in
Well,
something?
yeah, the zombie killers from outer space. Actors wanted July 2023. And then I asked the guy when it was going to be on, and he says, oh, well, he says, when we finish it all off of that. And then last year in the fall, he says, we're having the preview, and they had it at the Capitol Theater. And I hadn't heard anything about it till then. And then it was well received. The place was packed. Now, from what I understand, is being shown all over Europe, Africa, all over Asia, different things, or wherever
So
there's
what should we be looking for? Zombie killers from outer space? Is that it? Vampire zombies from outer space. Okay. But were you also in something just recently that they were showing in Montreal?
That was a short film. It was called Clue, after the game Clue. And I play a detective, and we're looking to find out who the killer was. And
Nice. All right.
it was about
So
a 6 or 7 minute short.
let's talk a bit about investing then. So what was the first stock you ever bought?
I invested in Canadian Tire. There was a stock market thing on Giles Avenue. They were having a stock market seminar, and the gentleman that put it on, he was a broker that used to be on the Canadian radio, and he talked about more or less blue chip stocks. These are buy and hold. He says Canadian Tire at the time. So I bought some Canadian Tire at a very
Now, how
good
long
price.
ago was this?
Shoot, we're probably talking 40 years ago.
Well, you'd have done all right with Canadian Tire if you bought it 40 years ago.
Yeah, I still have Canadian Tire now, but I bought that. This is one of the things. He says you get bored and you sell it. So what happens is I got bored and hung on to it for a couple of years, and I says, well, it's not really doing much. It's getting going up a little here, a little there. So I don't know, on a whim, I just sold it, which I kind of kicked myself for. But it has gone up, and it's been paying.
Yeah. Do you remember what you originally paid for it when you first bought it? Like it would have been like $10 a share or something.
I really don't. No, I don't want to.
Yeah. I want to say it probably would have been like $10, $20 a share or something. Yeah. Okay. So you sold that. Now, have you bought a lot of other things? What would you say is your worst investment you ever made?
I've got two worst ones. First up,
Okay. Let's hear them.
never buy off the phone. There's a guy from Toronto that called me. His name was Sonny Hussein. He had a British accent. He says, we're selling stocks. And he says, when you get a little extra money in your pocket, that's when you get foolish. And he says, send me $300. He says, we're going to make you a big, large amount of money. Well, $300, that we're talking about maybe 35 years ago or something like that, shortly after this stock that I had sold. And I hung on to that for a while, and I'd call him every now and then. Well, he says it's down a little bit right now, but hang on, hang on. And I think he was just touting a certain stock in that. So that's one. Then there was another one. It was actually a very successful stock in Canada. It was an electronic stock, and it was reasonably priced. I don't know how much a share, $5 or whatever. But I was shaving one day, and then it was on the radio that it was going down a little bit, and it was slated to go up. So I bought a few $1,000s worth of that.
What was that? Do you
Up.
remember the name?
Oh, I don't know the name. It's. I think it starts with an N or something like
Was
that.
it Nortel?
Nortel. No, it wasn't. Is Nortel American or Canadian?
No, Nortel's Canadian.
Okay, well that might be it then.
Yeah,
because I bought that, and then it actually went up to $10 a share. I got it for around $3 a share. It went to $10 a share, and I said, "Oh, good, we're sailing." And I hung on to it. I got greedy, and then it is dropped. Now it still comes out, but it got 0 beside it.
Yeah, no, that Nortel is a good one for the worst. I'm sure a lot of people share that. share that as a worst experience for sure. Okay, so what would you say the best investment you ever made was?
Well, it's still Canadian Tire. I had some extra money and I bought some Canadian Tire and I've been hanging on to it and it just increases in value. So as a buy and hold, it's good.
Yeah, well, and they're a solid dividend payer too. So
That's right. That's right.
yeah, you're just collecting money out the whole time. Oh,
Well, they
that's
got
good.
like the blue chip. If you want to buy and hold, go to a blue chip, and like Walmart's good. Of course, a lot of people are making like your electronic stocks. Of course, there was the bubble, but I guess Apple is good, and Microsoft, and all those other ones. But that's a little too rich for my blood at my age. I'm just buying and holding, just holding enough so that they can bury me.
Well, you can't take it with you.
Well, I know. At least leave me one share in the casket.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. In the old days, you'd get a nice, you might get a nice certificate if you wanted to,
Yeah,
but
you
I don't
did.
even
Yeah,
think you
you
can
did.
get those
Yeah,
anymore.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
So would that Canadian Tire, would that also be the last one you bought?
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, yeah, I've got books on stock and different things like that. And I said, if I get some extra money, but there are always something, some expenses and stuff like that. Actually, the guy that taught us the course there at WD Lowell, he says, you know what? He says, if you want to make money in a hurry, go to the racetrack. He says, and spend your money. He says, you'll have as much fun or maybe even more fun.
And was that same course that Chris was in, with Mark
No,
Meldrum? Is
this
that
is
right?
another one. No, this
What's
is
a
the
different one?
first one that I ever went. The first time I bought Canadian Tire.
So now you are in real estate, but have you ever purchased speculatively or for an investment purposes real estate?
Did. I bought a place for my stepson at the time. I thought he was going to go to university. He was in high school graduating. And I bought a little place not too far from the university. And he never did go to university. So I rented it out and I sold it a few years ago. I put a hefty profit for almost double the price.
Wow. Yeah, that's okay.
Pretty good.
That might be one of your best investments too.
Yeah, well, you know what? I never thought of that. I wasn't thinking of real estate, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good investment.
After that one, you didn't decide to go into like buying another property.
Not really. I've actually LNG. I put a buddy of mine onto liquid natural gas, and he's making a ton of money on it. And he's younger than I am, and he had some extra money. So he says, "Thank you for telling me about the stock." I just happened to mention it, as we were having a couple of beers and that. And I says that might be a good one to invest in.
So what's the actual stock? I don't know.
Well, it's LNG. There are a few of them, but liquid natural gas is going to be one of the things of the future. But it's still like they don't want to do any pipelines or anything like that. But we're selling liquid natural gas to a lot of other countries.
Yeah, I know there's one in BC here at terminal, and I think they just started shipping just maybe a couple weeks back now.
I still use propane out on the farm, and
Well,
it's going up. You want to talk about something going up? My propane bill goes up every year.
yeah, the
I said,
cost of it
"Oh,
goes up.
somebody's making money somewhere."
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So you got and before we go, you got any hot tips for us? LNG? Beyond
LNG,
that?
I would go with. Silver, still a good one. Gold. I used to listen to Hugh Hewitt here until he switched stations, and that gold was at under 3,000, I think. And yesterday, the price of gold is down a little bit, but it's at $3,400 an ounce.
Yeah.
So gold is always a good one. It fluctuates a lot, but silver is okay. And but the one thing we learned from the Mark Meldrum course, pick one or two sectors, no more, become a specialist in the sector. If you try and get into every sector, he says he says you're going to be too spread out.
Yeah, you'd be jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing.
And people should look up the sector and see what they like. I mean, they've got like Meldrum was into dry ships. So pick a couple, and you know what? If a stock is good today, it's going to be good 6 months from now. Don't be worried about jumping on the bandwagon and say, "Oh, geez, I missed it," because if that's what you want to stick on. I'm reading two books right now: Wolf of Wall Street,
Oh
which
yeah.
it's not for kids. I've seen the movie. The book is better than the movie. Very raw though on certain areas, but he talked about a certain shoe company that they touted, and the way he stayed above the law was he didn't go into the penny stocks because the SEC was always after him. He says, I always had something that was in the $10 and up range. And then he says, and he touted it and worked it through selling. And he said, I stayed within the range. And he says, like, he had kids that were in their 20s. He says, they're millionaires. He says, these kids, but he says, they're satisfying their drug habits and stuff like that. But he says, they were making money hand over fist. I'm just barely into the book, but it's an interesting book. And I just picked up another one called Liar's Poker, which that's all about the stock market also. So I haven't read that one yet.
But well, that's a good one. Yeah, Liar's Poker. That's a classic. All right. Well, anything else before we go here, Carl?
No, just give my regards to the wife and kids.
Yeah, we'll do. Great. Well, thanks. We've been speaking with Carl Idzinski. Carl, if people want to get a hold of you, maybe they've got a house they want to sell or something, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you? Are you on Twitter or anything like that?
Williams, Lifestyles, Realty, Windsor, Ontario, or service all of Essex County.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Carl. So if any of our listeners are looking to buy or sell real estate in Windsor, Essex County, you can contact Carl at Keller Williams. So back to Wheaton River Minerals, the second stock I ever purchased. Remember, I made $22 in just over a month, 7% in just over a month. I thought to myself, I'm a 18-year-old stock market genius. If I can make 7% in just over a month, think of compounding that over a year. I'm going to be Warren Buffett in no time. Now, it didn't all work out that way, unfortunately. I was quite satisfied with the $22 I'd made on my 1,000 shares. But had I held on for another 5 years, Wheaton River Minerals was merged with Gold Corp. Terms of the deal were that you would receive one Gold Corp share for every 4 shares of Wheaton you owned. So I would have gotten 250 shares. Gold Corp was later bought by Newmont Mining. And the terms of that deal was you'd got 0.328 shares and 2 cents in cash for every share of Gold Corp you had. So I would have ended up with 82 shares of Newmont Mining, which today is worth about $7,000. But at the peak, the $229 I had invested would have been worth $12,750. That would have been in 2010, and I would have made over $12,000, which is a compound annual return of about 40%. 40% a year is pretty good. Unfortunately, I gave up on that $12,000 to lock in my $22 profit. What are the lessons we can learn from my experience and Carl's experience? Well, I think both of us regret selling too early. Well, nothing works every time. While buy and hold would have been an excellent strategy with Canadian Tire, or maybe even with my Wheaton River Minerals, it would not have been a great strategy for the Nortel or even the GM or any of the auto plants that, while they provided good employment for the family, they would not have made great buy and hold investments at the time. Although one lesson that I think probably holds true almost every time is don't buy stocks being touted over the phone. So I think that's a good piece of advice that Carl gave us. And one other message might be just that patience is a virtue when you're investing. Warren Buffett increased his wealth well over 10 times since the age of 65. So from 65 to 95, his wealth has gone up tenfold. Unfortunately, I don't think many of us are going to replicate those results, but time in the market is always better than timing the market. Please remember that while I wrote the CFA exams and passed them, I am not an investment professional. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research. If you're interested in being a guest on our show, you can find me on X at Terry M. Hogan. My DMs are open.